thinking that if someone disrespects us, if someone hurts us, we act out in violence because we don't have that emotional intelligence to be able to regulate our anger.
I think that we have respect and reverence confused. And I would venture to say that that is even when we look at the older generation of Black people in general. Because a lot of times when we're talking about somebody respecting us, we really want to be revered.
Mm,
Um, it just like when we're talking about submission, we really want someone to be subservient.
mm,
A lot of this has to do with the fact that, and you and I have had this conversation, we don't really know what it is to be Black and a man
right.
or Black and a woman outside of a Eurocentric gaze, right? So everything of how we're defining ourselves is based off of how we see ourselves in relationship to the the colonizers, the conquer, whatever you want to call them, right? And we because they use words like you have to be submissive when they were making our ancestors be subservient. That's how we then defined being submissive because they were saying you have to respect me when what they really wanted was were having people do is revere them,
Right.
um, and almost in a godlike manner. That that is what we then entail want. Um, I put on my Facebook page a few days ago and I said, you know, the reason why the systems in this country don't change is because the people that don't benefit from them don't necessarily want the system to change. They just want to be at the top of the system, right? So for us as Black men, it's always we're looking at how we're treated as men in relation to how white men are treated,
Right.
right? And we want the same rights and privileges as them. And when we don't get that in the way in which we behave a lot of times, because I don't think believe behavior is toxic in and of itself. Masculinity is not toxic in and of itself.
No.
It's the ways in which you exert your masculinity. Um, so so those are the issues, and I think like we really have to get away from because we actually had this conversation a few months ago, calling it toxic, and it's just unhealthy. It's unhealthy behaviors.
Right.
Um, it's unhealthy uh, interactions. It's an unhealthy relationship with ourselves and with our community. As I said, like historically for us as Black people, we were more collectivists, right? And so the way that we viewed ourselves as men was our protecting our family, but our family was our community, right? Anybody could go to anybody's house and you were welcome as a child or as a brother, as a member of the family. And that is something that we as Black people lost with desegregation. Um, and it, this individuality is kind of what we saw then becoming portrayed in the Blaxploitation movies, right? That you mentioned, Dr. Malik, is like, okay, well, I got to protect myself, and you are going to respect me, and I'm going that's not necessarily what we had though. We
Right.
lost a lot of what we had as a people in becoming those things.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. I think a lot of the way black men are portrayed in media is kind of a reflection on how we kind of want to be viewed as the 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 hierarchy like white men. I was just watching a show just before we started this this broadcast, and it's like I was kind of looking at it and looking at the themes on how black men are portrayed in media. And the show was called The Shy. It was the season opening of The Shy, right? And so I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I was telling them that this show is trying to almost mimic The Wire in the sense of how it's trying to portray Chicago in the same like lens that The Wire viewed Baltimore, right? And then I think about shows like Power and the character Ghost, and then I think about the new show Power Book Two with his son Tyreek, and and usually what I think about is it's funny because all those shows have a common theme of how the black male is. And then I think about a show like I think it's called Insecure by Issa Rae, and the dynamics on how she portrayed black men was much more nuanced to where they had more substance and more character versus the way these shows are viewing black men as kind of one dimensional. They got to be tough, kind of a gangster, no nonsense, violent, and like you said, the reverence, but they'll use the respect part, right? Yeah, but so it's like, but and when you look at a show like Insecure, the way she portrayed the black men in that show was much more nuanced. Now we can get into a discussion on whether the black men in that show was positive or negative as far as the way they were viewed or anything, but it's like it gives a much more holistic view on the different ways a black man can be.
I think that the reality of it is that most black men are more nuanced than that. Um, the sad part about it is, though, that we don't show that nuance to black women. A lot of times, the nuance is shared with other black men. Like
You think so?
yeah, you'll break down with your boys over a situation, but you won't necessarily do that with your woman, or with a woman, unless it's your mama, right?
Right.
Um, but a lot of those more nuanced sides of us, more vulnerable sides of us, we're not so readily available to share with other people. And I think that, you know, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, like you said, the media portrays us to be one way. We've bought into this idea of who we are, again, based off of a Eurocentric lens. So this
Right.
is how they see me, so this is how I am. I was watching a TikTok, that this woman that looks at, she looks at movies and stuff, but talks about them from a historical perspective. And she was talking about Norman Lear. And Norman Lear was talking about the Cosby Show versus um, the Jeffersons. And he was saying that he felt that the Jeffersons was a more realistic portrayal of what it was like for us than the Cosby Show, which was done by us. Um, and he based that because he said that George he was more comical and things of that nature. But again, that's something that somebody else put out and said that this is how we're supposed to be. And because art imitates life, life imitates art, we watch these things and then we start trying to be that because we believe that that's what we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
It's like looking on social media and you're constantly seeing people taking trips, or everyone's living their best life. You're supposed to live the best life, forgetting that in between the picture that they posted and them taking the picture, life happened. And you know what happened in those spaces. That's what we see. And so that's what we think we're supposed to be doing and what we think life is supposed to be like. And so when you're watching these movies and because of the systems that have been put in place to dismantle the Black family, and the Black family historically was not just the nuclear family of a mom, a dad, and the children. The Black family historically was the community. The Black family was extended family and all of that, but because we've lost that in trying to gain other things, and the systems that have been put in place, because we lost that, and then they're taking the fathers away, a lot of Black men, the only father figure they have are the representations of masculinity and men that they see on television.